Good afternoon or good morning whenever you're watching this, everybody. This is designed to be a quick introduction for you to the 16th century or the Renaissance period. And it's important to understand that there are two terms for this period. When we call it the Renaissance, we're thinking more of this conscious break with the medieval culture. Even though they do get nostalgic and they write about it, and we start thinking about the past, we do have a very conscious, like, we are no longer like this. They don't destroy it, but they just want to be newer and better. And we also view this as a time where human nature is a huge focus. We really want to explore what can people do, and it also it's a time period of extraordinary people. Some critics will tell you that we don't have this level of extraordinary people again in a time period for Britain, but there's a lot of big names that come out of this period, and we are very human focused during it. It's also known as the early modern period, but we don't see that as much in terms of people calling it the early modern, just because that is really focused mainly on linguistics. So the language change happening here. We also sometimes think of it as the start of modern culture. So if you have heard of market economy, a centralized state of power, those kind of things, those seeds get planted during this period that leads into modern. So yes, we normally call it the Renaissance, but it is also considered an early modern type of setting. It's also good to note that Britain is not the world power that we think of it today. Britain, especially London, can seem kind of wild and not as refined as other European cities or countries. People will leave England to travel and go get culture and learn other languages, but they're not coming from other countries, other cultures to England to explore. However, what this does mean is that foreign phrases, foreign habits, foreign dress are going to be brought in to like enrich the country. By the end of this century, nationalism is going to be growing as the start of colonization is getting. Even though Britain's not a world power at this time, it is a quickly growing and strengthening country. Markets are improving. You're having universities that are getting even stronger. The royal court is going to become very strong and very central to everyday life. Banks are developing. You have investments. You have credit. A new and influential merchant class is rising. So it's not that England is just kind of stagnant at this time. It's just not the world power we think of today. But this century is what's going to lead to that world power. So I mentioned that the court is strengthening. A couple important things happened. The War of Roses end. So that's a long war back and forth between the Lancasters and the York women. So that finally comes to the end. The Lancasters win. Henry VII has Lancaster blood. He is a grandson of a former king. He does marry a woman from the York side. So in a way, kind of pulls the two sides together to help meld it a little bit. And, no one can really fight back because there's no money left. So he's the king, and that's kind of it, because there's no resources to fight against that. This is the start of the Tudor dynasty, which is one of the most famous dynasties in England, not only because it lasts for a long time, who they are, but also just the people know who the Tudors are, or Tudor style kind of thing. Henry VII does pull a lot of power back into the court for a lot of things. Parliament has to approve certain things like raising of taxes, but power gets really back onto the royalty as much as possible. The court is also going to be shaping culture and the taste of the country. So whatever the court people are interested in, that's what culture is going to be, and that's what we're going to be interested in, and that's the way things move. That does mean culture is going to shift rapidly. So if we think of today, ideas of fast fashion and how like trends are changing constantly, especially with the use of social media like TikTok, similar then to now, just a little bit slower because we don't have internet, but it would make that shift. It also has a time where there is no freedom of speech. Most people don't have literacy anyways, so like, yes, it's on the rise. People are becoming more literate, especially the wealthy class. But there is no freedom of speech, which means mass communication is very limited, which means the court controlling culture and having all the power is a lot easier because they control what's put out there and they control what's being said, and no one can really question that. favorites of the royalty are still going to be the ones with power. So in order to have power in society or the government, you had to be close and considered a favorite of the royalty at the time. But that does mean there's a lot of paranoia. There's going to be some obsession with secrets and spying and duplicity and betrayals, because you both had to be on display but also hide parts of yourself to be safe, because you needed to display everything they wanted to see and be cool and popular and well, awesome. But like, that could easily shift, and there's certain parts of your personality maybe you kept hidden to not lead into the paranoia of the royalty or the court, get targeted. This does mean that speech gets really layered, and sometimes that's why we as students may not like it, because there's a lot of layers to what's going on. But they had to be very good at words and very good at having multiple meanings to what they're saying. So we do get some of the best poets coming out at this time, and royalty's going to flip-flop quickly. We see that with Sir Walter Raleigh. He was a favorite. Elizabeth I loves him, and then he ends up being put in the Tower because he married somebody, and she was like, nope. All right, so you had to be your best. You had to keep up with the constantly shifting fashions and cultures, but you also had to make sure you stayed on the right side and you didn't do something that seems ridiculous and anger the royalty. Part of power and status is represented by dress. So you will have to be well dressed in on the trends, and so that's why you see a lot of wealthy men and women going over the top with their clothing. We have Protestantism, which is on the rise during this period. It doesn't really start until Henry VIII's first divorce, but it's on the rise, and because of Protestantism, literacy is going to go up as well. Not everything is going to be printed. There's still a lot of oral storytelling and sharing of entertainment. So you might get some manuscripts happening, but it's all coming together. Your Norton textbooks will tell you that the great innovations of the Tudor era, the intellectual, governmental, and religious, were all presented at the time as attempts to restore lost links with ancient traditions. So we do have the idealized, nostalgic past, like I mentioned. So as all of these great things are happening, people rising and falling from power, culture shifting and building, we still want to connect to our past and make it like go back to our roots. This period ends with James I coming to power. It becomes a little bit darker of a time period for that. But really fascinating quick tidbit of James I is that he is the James that we have the King James Version of the Bible being written in. So this will come to an end, this period, with as James I ascends, is a little bit darker time of history, but he does do some great things for the country.